Have you ever stopped to think about what happens in your brain when you feel that wave of pleasure? Imagine yourself eating a delicious piece of chocolate or receiving a message notification. This moment of joy is deeper than you imagine. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of pleasure, is not just a molecule. It's the key that unlocks the doors to our reward system. But what happens when that key becomes a prison? Dopamine is fundamental to our motivation and reward. When we perform a pleasurable activity, it is released, creating a feeling of happiness that encourages us to repeat the behavior. However, this same substance that propels us forward can also drag us into an abyss. Have you ever wondered why some people become dependent on substances or behaviors that initially were just a form of fun? As dopamine becomes a constant in our lives, what was once pleasurable can transform into a need. The line between use and abuse becomes blurred. An intriguing fact, it is known that people who seek intense experiences, such as gambling or social media, are often trying to fill a void. But what is this void, and why is dopamine at the center of this battle? As we explore this complex relationship between pleasure and addiction, a disturbing question arises. Does the relentless pursuit of stimulation become the real trap? As we delve deeper into the subject, prepare to discover how this dance between pleasure and dependence shapes not only our actions, but also our lives. And so, we leave a question hanging in the air. How far would you go to feel pleasure? Perhaps you didn't realize when it started. There wasn't a specific day, nor a clear warning. It was something silent, a habit that seemed harmless. You wake up, and even before getting out of bed, you grab your phone. Not because you need to, but because something inside you demands it. During the day, small pauses become automatic escapes. A quick video, endless scrolling, a distraction that promises immediate relief, and for a few seconds, it delivers. But soon after comes something difficult to explain, a strange tiredness, a slight restlessness, as if nothing is ever enough. That's when many people start judging themselves. They believe they've lost their strength, discipline, or control. But what's happening isn't weakness, it's adaptation. The brain learns quickly. When it receives intense stimuli frequently, it starts demanding more to feel the same effect. What was once pleasure becomes the norm. What was enough starts to seem empty. And then that feeling common to so many people today arises. Life is in motion, but inside, something seems still. Men and women experience this every day without naming it. At work, the difficulty of maintaining focus. At home, the feeling of being physically present but distant inside. Relationships that lose depth. Small moments that no longer resonate. The brain, accustomed to excess, begins to reject simplicity. And it is at this point that the cycle strengthens. Pleasure is no longer sought for joy, but to silence discomfort. But there's something important that almost no one talks about. This emptiness isn't a flaw in you. It's a sign, a warning that something in the system is out of balance. Before discussing how this becomes established, it's necessary to understand why the brain prefers easy stimulation to real meaning, and what this reveals about the choices you believe you're making every day. There comes a point when we start to doubt ourselves. It's no longer just the pleasure that draws attention, it's the anticipation of it. Even before picking up the phone, the body reacts. A slight restlessness, a rush without a clear reason, as if something were overdue. While I was making this video, I realized how often this happens to me without me noticing. The mind is already searching for the next stimulus even before a conscious decision has been made. And the most curious thing is that it's not the pleasure that holds us back, it's the interval between one stimulus and another. That's where the discomfort appears. The silence becomes heavy. Being alone with one's own thoughts begins to bother us. And then comes a question that almost no one likes to ask. Why is it so difficult to simply spend a few minutes without seeking anything?
When the brain gets used to quick rewards, it starts to reject anything that requires continuity. Reading a few pages is already tiring. Maintaining focus on something longer seems impossible. Real conversation without distractions becomes an effort. I say this because I noticed it in myself. It wasn't a lack of interest in life. It was an excess of stimulation. The brain starts to confuse intensity with value. If it's quick, it seems important. If it's simple, it seems boring. Have you ever noticed how many people are busy but rarely satisfied? They do a lot, consume the whole day, but when they stop, they feel a strange emptiness. While I was writing this part, I thought about how many times this emptiness appears at the end of the day, when everything is silent. Excess dopamine doesn't generate fulfillment, it generates constant searching. And when everything becomes a search, the present is never enough. Something dangerous happens here. The person starts to believe they've lost their motivation, that something inside them is broken. I've thought that myself, but the truth is simpler and harsher at the same time. The internal system is tired. The brain, overloaded, loses the ability to feel pleasure in ordinary things. It's as if the volume of life is always too high, and when everything is intense, nothing is profound. If it's not a lack of willpower, then where does it really begin? We live surrounded by triggers all the time. Sounds, images, notifications, quick promises of relief. Each choice seems small, but together they form a powerful pattern. The brain learns to react, not to choose. It stops asking, does this make sense, and starts answering, does this stimulate me? And as I observed my own habits, I realized how many decisions I thought were conscious were just automatic responses. Do you feel like you choose, or do you just react to what appears in front of you? The most insidious thing is that it doesn't hurt at first. It's comfortable. It's normal. Everyone does it. But little by little, the ability to sustain attention, frustration, and silence diminishes. And without these three things, there is no real growth. There is no clarity. There is no emotional depth. Even so, there's something important here. The brain isn't broken. It's conditioned. And everything that's been conditioned can be re-educated. But before talking about change, there's a truth I needed to accept while making this video. Easy dopamine doesn't just steal time. It changes what we expect from life. And when that expectation changes, everything changes along with it. There comes a point where this stops being just a feeling and starts showing up in the numbers. Studies show that the average human attention span has dropped drastically in recent decades, becoming shorter than it was many years ago. While I was researching for this video, something caught my attention. It wasn't the data itself, but how well it described real people around me. Intelligent people, full of potential, saying they can no longer concentrate for 10 minutes at a time without feeling the urge to check something. I met a man who said he was always tired even though he slept well. A woman who could no longer finish series, books, or projects, always jumping to the next one. In both cases, there was no lack of ability, there was an excess of stimulation. Their brains were in constant alert, as if every pause were a threat. And the most unexpected thing is that this activates the same stress circuit in the body. Constant pleasure keeps the organism tense. While I was putting this part together, I noticed something uncomfortable within myself, the urge to interrupt, to speed up, to skip steps. That's how addiction sustains itself. It doesn't shout, it rushes. It convinces you that staying is a waste of time. But when life becomes only reaction, meaning begins to slip away. Have you noticed how silence is more frightening than noise these days?
The most curious thing is that when these people distance themselves from stimuli for a short period, the discomfort increases before decreasing. Many give up there, thinking they're getting worse, but in reality, it's the system trying to reorganize itself. And understanding this completely changes how you see this process, because the problem was never you, it was the pace you were taught to live at. If you've made it this far, you've probably already realized that the problem was never a lack of willpower. It wasn't laziness or weakness. What happened was an entire system being trained to react, not to choose. As I was finalizing this script, I thought about how many times I tried to change habits without understanding what was behind them, and I always ended up back where I was. Now it's clear why. A brain conditioned to easy stimuli doesn't respond to guilt. It responds to context. The good news is that nothing said here is definitive. The brain learns quickly, but it also relearns. When you start reducing stimuli, tolerating initial boredom, sustaining silence for a few more minutes, something changes inside. Pleasure stops coming from the click and begins to arise from progress, small, imperfect, but real. Motivation doesn't appear as an explosion, it appears as stability, and that changes everything. Perhaps you're still wondering where to begin, and the most honest answer is simple. Start by noticing, observing when you seek unnecessary stimulation, not to judge yourself, but to understand. That's what I did while producing this content. That awareness alone already gives you back some control. If this video resonated with you, if you recognized yourself in it at any point, subscribe to the channel and like this content. This really helps keep this space alive. Share your questions or personal situations in the comments, anonymously if you prefer. Many people read this and feel less alone when they realize they're not the only ones going through this. Thank you for staying until the end, for listening attentively, and for allowing yourself to reflect. See you in the next video.